Welcome back. This is Zangler, the Tesla Semi Advocate, and this is a long, in-depth video on the Tesla Giga Semi factory construction for January 24th, 2025. One of the first things I noticed as I rolled up on my drone takeoff location were these guardrails. I noticed them from down below. It had been about 5 days since my last flight, and I hadn't even noticed. I certainly hadn't noticed, but I don't believe they'd even started on those guardrails. So they've put those guardrails up, and if I recall from the rendering, there's going to be a Tesla Semi racetrack, test track. Now, don't call it a racetrack, but there'll be some racing. By the way, I have it on good authority that if you go into a special software mode on the Tesla Semi, you can smoke the tires on the torque drive axle, which is pretty cool. I can't say if I've seen it with my own eyes, the video, but I may have. So anyway, there's the guardrails, and there's going to be a deep dive into the stamping pit foundation construction. A lot of work being done there, a lot of workers, and a long video with a lot of content allowing you to look into that. So when I first started flying here, or at least when they first started the major construction, they put in a lot of infrastructure. Underground stormwater pipe and drainage was one of the first things I noticed, as well as underground freshwater, underground electricity, and underground fiber optic, all of which ran out to the street. And then they buried all that with seemingly no markers, but as you know, they're able to find it. And what they're doing now, I believe, is in addition to putting in freshwater pipe, they are connecting to that stormwater management pipe that was already put in and has been underground for a long time. And now they're actually putting the risers with the drainage. And here's a beautiful look at the American flag. You can see that it's a pretty stiff breeze today, probably mid-30s. So the Tesla Semi Advocate stays warm as he flies, but he has to keep his hands exposed to have controls of the drone. And you may have just seen a little dot of the Tesla Semi Advocate's Model S Plaid drone support vehicle. The other big thing that you should know, one of the key events for today, which is really a watershed event, the exterior of this building is complete. The last remaining portions in the far back right, which is the southeast corner of the building, has now been completed. As of our last flight last Sunday, there was still quite a bit to be done. The wall is complete, and the last section of roof, which I had last week, I had predicted that the wall would be complete, and I thought that perhaps the roofing would be complete or nearly complete, and it is. The last section, which is section D, has roofing material just loaded up onto it, and I imagine that'll be done in less than 2 weeks, maybe more, something like around 10 days. So here's a good look at the extensive progress being made at the stamping pit foundation structure. Massive amounts of rebar, forms, and then pouring concrete and then removing them. This is the smaller of the two pits that is on the eastern end, that is east of the larger pit, and you can see that that had a bunch of that rebar was just dangling up, and now they're putting the forms around it, And I imagine my flight next week, I've kind of pulled back on flying twice a week because it seems that the interest has waned a little bit now that the sexy part of the construction is done. I will continue to fly probably once a week, and I will up that based on user input and if there's growth in the number of viewers. Um, Otherwise, we'll do it once a week and leave it at that. There'll still be plenty to see as they bring in the assembly line equipment and fit out the building. There's all that insulation that has just been delivered. That crane there in the middle is used to load that insulation and rolls of waterproof membrane, and they'll do a pretty good job, pretty quick job of getting that done. As you can see, as we rounded that corner, I neglected to point out that that is where the wall had been incomplete last week, and it is now 100% complete. Here's some dirt work being done there. Maybe that's one of the first places they're going to pour asphalt. Lots of skylights. And this section that we're looking at, the section D, according to the rendering, will not get skylights. And somebody pointed out, which is one of the great things about these videos, is the viewer input, because they can think of a lot more things than I do and have more expertise. But one of the reasons the section D may not have skylights is because it could be the paint shop. Here's a good look around at all of the activity going on around the exterior of the building. That dirt pile is probably, started thinking about it, it's probably some of the dirt that's going to be put back in to the stamping pit area once the foundations are poured and completed and cured. But let's just take a look at this amazing work that's being done by a lot of workers, and you can tell the size of this and the scale by the size of those little tiny workers. They're normal workers, but they look tiny from this vantage point. They're getting tarps out, which may be waterproof membrane that they put on top of the, I can't see how they could put those under because the concrete has to pour into that rebar grid. So those might be put on top of the, after the pour is complete. And there's a good chance that by the next flight, this will be entirely filled in with concrete. Looks like it's kind of tricky to walk across that rebar cage. It looks like there's so much rebar that there's not much danger of falling through. This is the completed part where they actually put a roof and they have a freestanding wall there that you can see where that allows access to underneath for the scrap. It'd be very interesting to see how this takes shape, to see if there's a underground access is maintained so that they can pull that scrap out versus that being backfilled. We're just going to pan around the southwest corner. That blue wall is a temporary or is an interior wall, temporarily acting as an exterior wall until the stamping building, Section G, is complete. For those who haven't been following, one of the ways this project was capital efficient is the minimal use of cranes. They were able to use the BZI Mesmaster to do all the roof panels, and they only brought in the crane to support the construction of the pit, and also when they needed to load roofing material. There is the big dog Tesla semi standing guard over the factory construction, where nearly 150 of his brothers will be created every day. That is Legacy Giga Nevada in the background, and this is a nice look at the sheer scale and size of the new Tesla semi factory, and possibly Robovan factory too, if you've been following along. Just based on the branding and some other pieces of information, we're thinking that they might be building the Robovan here too. Tesla did say that there will be one other thing, and the Robovan could be the one other thing. Beautiful look around at the 4,000 foot elevation of northern Nevada, and this is another twin fulfillment center building, just like all of these that are in the neighborhood. And this area of northern Nevada, the USA Parkway, Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, is rapidly expanding. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.